Speak on the Show 2021, episode 34. I'm back, y'all. I'm back. Y'all ready? Let's go. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Speak On. I'm your boy, R.W. Coolins. First and foremost, giving honor to God who allows me to come at you in this manner on a weekly basis. Been a minute, y'all. Been a minute. Been about 3 weeks. Not by choice. I had some things going on. Not by choice. Well, by choice, but not by choice. You know how that works. A little under the weather last week. I appreciate everybody reaching out to me, making sure I was all right, making sure I didn't have that Coco-19, you know. For y'all that didn't know, Coco-19, that's COVID-19. Got that from a comedian out there, was throwing that out there, Coco-19. I figured to make it sound a little bit better, you know, so y'all wouldn't be too concerned. But I know COVID's nothing to play with, so if anybody took offense to it, I apologize. COVID-19. I did not have that. I just a little under the weather. So I'm back. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's see what we got here. rwcoolins.com. That's the website. You can go there, get all the information you want, all the information you need. Everything that you need to know about the show is on the website. We're going to be doing some other things on the website. We're also broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube this morning. So if you want to download after the fact, also you can find it on Spreaker.com and Apple iTunes. That's the audio. You can find it after the show. How's everybody doing out there? Man, I missed y'all. 844-904-2665. That's 844-904-2665. No matter what the situation is, let your voice be heard. All we ask is if you call in or you leave a comment, say what you mean what you say. That's the only requirement we have here on the Speak On the Show. I don't know why this microphone is not sounding like it's supposed to. Let me check something here for a minute. I hope it's clear on your end, but it sounds a little muffled in my ear here. So let me check this out. Looks like everything's on up and up. So let's continue on. This might be my hearing, because you know my hearing's a little fuzzy from the sinus congestion and everything like that. So it's been a little whirlwind here. Brian Hoodie, appreciate it. Good morning, bro. Appreciate the support. Veronique Nichols Allen. I was great. Miss Veronique, what's going on? Appreciate the support. Thanks for tuning in. Sharon Carroll, good morning, cuz. Appreciate the support. Thank you for tuning in. So as I was mentioning, you know, I was out, got a little sick, got a little under the weather. I think it's going around, combination of flu, allergies, all that kind of stuff. But I'm back. We're ready to roll. So we're gonna go ahead and get this in. As I mentioned, the formalities, I think we got all those out the way. And let's just get the elephant out the room. Let's put it out the room right now. You know, because I know there's a lot of people that think, well, you know what? I'm not even going to get into that. You know, I try to keep my personal life separate from my radio show life. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to continue down that path. Also, if you haven't subscribed on YouTube, go to YouTube, subscribe, hit the subscribe button, follow me there. We're going to be going to strictly YouTube after the first of the year. So I'm working on that now, trying to work out some kinks here and there. But we're going to do what we do when we do what we do. TC, Terrence Collins, good morning, bro. Appreciate the support. Appreciate everybody tuning in this morning. But I got some topics we're going to get on, because, you know, I've been holding off for some things. I got some things that jumped out at me that just aren't sitting right with me. So let's go on and get into this. Let's do this. 1.2 trillion. 1.2 trillion. Now, everybody knows when you talk about trillions of dollars, you got to be talking about something dealing with the government. And that's what we're talking about today. $1.2 trillion for the infrastructure bill that was passed late last night by the House, sending it over to President Joe Biden to be signed off. Now, a lot of people are in uproar about this $1.2 trillion. They say it's too much spending here, too much spending there. But let me break down what it all deals with as far as what's in the bill and how much is being allotted for these things. And then I got something I want to caveat with that. But just for you guys out there that don't know what's in this bill for $1.2 trillion, now your tax dollars, let's just be real, your tax dollars and what it's going for. Now it's for the infrastructure bill. Now, during the last presidency, we heard infrastructure week for like years, and nothing was done. Nothing was written, nothing was signed, nothing was funded, none of it. So we finally got some infrastructure, and this is where I think a lot of people need to pay attention, because what happens is we get caught up in the cosmetics of a number, but we don't pay attention to what it's going for. So we all need to get involved, get to reading and all that kind of stuff. Michelle Long, good morning. Good morning. Appreciate it. Glad to see you back. Appreciate you. April Whedon, appreciate you, sis. Appreciate your support. So like I said, everybody's not aware of a lot of things that go into these bills. But as a tax-paying citizen, as a voting representative in this country, you need to pay attention to what's being put in here, what's not being put in here, who voted for it, who didn't vote for it. All those things come into play when we start going to the polls to reelect or put someone else in who may be in our best interest of what we're trying to get done. Now, mind you, this bill has been kicked down the road and everything, pushed back, everything like that. But here's what it deals with. The infrastructure bill deals with roads and bridges, major projects, $110 billion. Passenger and freight rail, $66 billion. Public transit, $39 billion. Airports, $25 billion. Port infrastructure, $17 billion. Transportation safety programs, $11 billion. Electric vehicles, $7.5 billion. Zero and low emission buses and ferries, $7.5 billion. Revitalization of communities, $1 billion. Now, those are some of the top things that were in there. Now, the other things are broadband internet, $65 billion. Now, the broadband internet is important because there's a lot of people that can't afford it. This is going to get them in the fact of, when everybody had to stay home and a lot of kids were doing online school, they didn't have internet or anything. This is what this $65 billion is going for. Now, some of it was lowered in this $65 billion, but it's still there. Power infrastructure, $55 billion. What's this? Western water storage, $50 billion, and removal of pollution from water and soil, $21 billion. Now, a lot of that you don't pay attention to, you don't listen to, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say these top ones that I talked about, like the roads, bridges, and all that. We hear about bridges falling and falling apart and decrepit roads and different things like that. This is a bill that should have been done a long time ago, years and years ago, presidents ago. Now we finally got it. Let's see what happens with this, because everybody knows they run around in certain areas. You're hitting potholes. You see bridges that are always under construction because they're not fixing, they're doing repairs. They're not fixing, they're doing repairs. There's a difference in the two words. If you don't know, look it up. Fixing and repairs are two different things. So with this money, hopefully we'll get to the point where they're fixing for the long term rather than making repairs as they come along. OT, morning, bro. Appreciate your support. Kathy Aiken, good morning, man. Appreciate you. So this is where we're at with this infrastructure bill. But I brought this up, and I know a lot of y'all probably ain't interested in it, but I thought it needed to be brought up because here's where the difference in the mindset of the presidents and the Congress and the Senate that we deal with the changing of the guard and the changing of the people that are in charge. If you recall, now that was $1.2 trillion that's going to help fix infrastructure. Back in 2017, President Donald Trump and his Senate, Congress, whoever they be, passed a $1.9 trillion bill that was only for tax cuts for the rich. It was supposed to be tax cuts and job acts and a Jobs Act for the rich. But the only people that felt this were the rich. They got tax cuts. And we all heard about how, they already don't pay the full amount of taxes that they should. But these tax cuts cost us as taxpayers, for the rich, $1.9 trillion. Now, I was reading an article the other day where 18 millionaires, billionaires, whatever you want to call them, all in that category up there, received stimulus checks during COVID-19. The $246, $230, $300 that people were receiving out there because they needed it. There were billionaires that were receiving this $300 stimulus check. You're wondering why. I'm glad you asked. Let me tell you. The reason they received these stimulus checks, if you recall, the stimulus checks were provided and being issued out by tax bracket. How much you paid in taxes, up to a certain amount of point of your income. If you're $75,000 and less, you got the stimulus check. Well, because these billionaires show no income and show no taxes being paid on their personal side, it's all business side, they were sent $300 checks just like the person out here struggling. The question is, did any of them give it back? The question is, did any of them give it back? These are the flaws that are in our system. And then you have to ask the question, these are billionaires not paying taxes. These are billionaires not paying taxes and being identified on the rolls to receive a stimulus check because they haven't paid taxes, or it shows that they make less than $75,000 when they do file. What's wrong with this system? What's wrong with these processes? How can a billionaire make all this money, Bezos and Musk and all these guys, and their names weren't in there, it was other people, but how can these people make all this money and pay less taxes than you or me? And then have the nerve to get a stimulus check for $300 that was geared towards the people that truly needed it, but they got a check in the mail as well because it comes off the computer systems, and the computer system reads whatever it reads as far as who's eligible, who's not. It doesn't say billionaire beside their name, but they're making billions of dollars and getting a $300 stimulus check. Also, I've seen in the news that they're trying to start charging people for the PPP loans. People that were going out here getting PPP loans. And I read this one article on a female. She received over $300,000, I think, for the PPP loans for her business. These PPP loans were supposed to be going out to people to keep their people on the payroll, being able to sustain during the pandemic and everything like that. But now they're finding out that people use the money for personal things. We've seen some of the articles. But it just seems to me that the only people that are going after are the people at this level, not the people at this level, because a lot of those businesses, big businesses, receive PPP loans, and they still lay their workers off. They still close their doors, but they still receive that money. We'll keep an eye on that and see how that goes. Just saying. We got to pay attention to how these systems work. Are they for you or against you? Do they go after certain people and not others? How does this work? How does this work? Just the way it works, just the way it is. Voter fraud attempt. Voter fraud attempt. Now, this week in Virginia, New Jersey, a couple places all around, there's been a lot of things going on as far as voting. Y'all, excuse me, I'm still under the weather a little bit. Hold on. Jacqueline Diggs Barnett, congratulations to you and your missus. Good to see you back. I said I wasn't going to talk about that on here this morning, but I appreciate the shout out for me and my, new nuptials and everything. But I appreciate that, Jackie Diggs. Thank you very much. Anyway, moving on. Voter fraud attempt. VA voter fraud attempt. So there was elections all over. There was New Jersey, Virginia. I don't know all of them, but Republicans won some of them. But there was no, watch this now, there was no insistence that there was any type of voter fraud out there on a large scale by Republicans that may have lost. So it makes you wonder, was all that we heard before just for show and tell? Because we never got anything that said it was true to fact that there was voter fraud. But this right here, let me read it to you and let you solve it for yourself and see what's going on. So in Virginia, Governor-elect Glenn Youngkin's teenage son, the one that won, the Republican that won, tried to vote in Tuesday's election twice. Governor-elect Glenn Youngkin's teenage son tried to vote twice in the election, despite being clearly too young to legally cast a ballot. He apparently walked into a voting station at the Great Falls Library in Great Falls, Virginia, and handed over his driver's license to election officials when asked for identification. It didn't take long for the woman, Jennifer Chanty, to notice who the teen was. She recognized him. After which she informed him that Virginia law stipulates that voters must be at least 18 years old on election day in order to legally vote. The only time a 17-year-old may cast a ballot is in primary election. And even then, they must provide proof that they will turn 18 before the general election. Chanty told the Post that she offered to register him for the next election, but he refused and left the polling place. Then, roughly 20 minutes later, Youngkin's son, Governor-elect Youngkin's son, returned to insist that he be allowed to vote, citing another 17-year-old friend who had done so earlier in the day. I told him, I don't know what occurred with your friend, but you are not registered to vote today. You're welcome to register, but you will not be voting today. Making the situation even more strange was the fact that Youngkin's family was registered to vote at a different election location. A Youngkin campaign official, Devin O'Malley, released a fiery statement following reports of the incident being made public, calling them opposition research pitched by his political opponents. This is what he said in defense of the young Youngkin. It's unfortunate that while Glenn attempts to unite the Commonwealth, Glenn is Youngkin, the mayor-elect, governor-elect, to unite the Commonwealth around his positive message of better schools, safer streets, a lower cost of living, and more jobs, his political opponents, mad that they suffered historic losses this year, are pitching opposition research on a 17-year-old kid who honestly misunderstood Virginia election law and simply asked polling officials if he was eligible to vote. When informed he was not, he went to school. Now that's their statement. Now, for months, a key pillar of Youngkin's campaign was election integrity. The new governor-elect went so far as to promise an election integrity task force that would monitor elections for fraud and advocated several times for audits of election machines, something that is already mandated under Virginia law. And then someone made the statement that said, teenagers do stupid things. I'll chalk it up to that. I'll believe that first before I believe anything else as far as what this young man was trying to do. I call BS. I call BS. There's two ways you can look at this. Let's start with number one. Number one, I'm going to start with the fact of, were they sending him there, or did someone send him there to see if they were going to let him vote in the election to try to make it seem like this is rampant across Virginia? That's my first thought. That's the first thing that came to my mind. Was this a setup? Was he a sacrificial lamb thrown out there to see if he was going to get away with it? So they could say, if Youngkin lost, that there was voter fraud all over because my son, who was 17 years old, was able to vote. That's the first thing I thought. But me being who I am, I thought a little deeper. I went into thinking mode. And then I asked myself, wait a minute. Is this real? Because we're talking about the governor-elect's son, who is 17 years old, who went to a different polling place than his family usually goes to or was registered to go to. And he went in there, nonchalantly presented his license for ID or whatever to vote, knowing that he's only 17 years old. Now, I'm going to ask the question. He's 17 years old. He's the son of the politician who's running for governor. How did he not know he wasn't eligible to vote? Somebody help me understand this. This stinks to the point of they're attempting to try to find something wrong with the system in case the father lost. Is it me? Because I know everybody knows you can't vote unless you're 18 years old. And for a 17-year-old to go to the poll, not once, but twice, to walk up to the same place within a 20-minute span after he's been told no to try to vote, something in the water ain't clean. And then for this lawyer or representative to come out with this quote unquote fiery statement to make it seem like they're just going after Governor-elect Youngkin because of what he promised to do in the Democrats' loss. They never said what this poll worker, whether she was Republican or Democrat. That's number one. Number two, why are they so adamant on this, that, and the other, rather than focusing on the fact that this young man went to a polling place to vote? They told him no twice, and now you're mad because it got out in the news? Well, he shouldn't have been there. And if his father and his mother, who are running to be in political office, did not tell him he wasn't eligible to vote, then I'm trying to figure out what kind of household they run. Unless it was a setup from the start. Sacrificial lamb. Send him on out there. Let's see what happens. But then they got a defendant saying he's a 17-year-old kid that made a mistake. No, you don't make a mistake like that. And then you don't throw somebody else under the bus trying to say, well, my friend voted here at 17 years old. That's BS. Was it a heavily black district? No. No, not that I've seen. The Greater Falls Library, Great Falls, Virginia. No, not heavily black district. Not at all. Nowhere close. Should be real. Nowhere close. But good question, Brian Hoodie. No, it's not a heavily black district. Great Falls is out in the suburbs of Virginia. So no, not at all. But my biggest thing, like I said, I'm curious on what the meaning was behind it all. Because there's something not clean in the water for me. He was never charged with anything like that because he wasn't able to vote. But the fact that he showed up at the poll on the day that his father's running for governor to try to vote knowing he's 17 and can't vote, it didn't take somebody at the polling place to tell him he wasn't eligible. I'm sorry. You can't convince me that them polling people were the only ones that told him he couldn't vote. And that's when he found out. You can't convince me of that. I'm sorry. Something ain't clean in the water. And I'm going to leave it at that. Under conditions. Now, I seen this one. Everybody know who's Marjorie Taylor Greene. You know, the Republican is causing all this chaos up there. Don't want to wear a mask, been fined over $5,000 for not wearing a mask when she's in the Capitol. And then she's the one that supposedly chased down AOC, in the halls or whatever, and shouting at her, and then was shouting at another Democratic congressperson on the steps of the Capitol. I think everybody knows who it is. And then Louis Gohmert, another Republican who's loud and wrong at times. But they found it in their hearts, because of who they are and where they sit, to take a visit to the DC jail where the insurrection people are being held because they wanted to check out the conditions that the insurrection folks that are being held, before trial, what the conditions are, because they've heard a lot of complaints. This is what it says. The treatment alleged Capitol rioters are receiving in jail has been a topic of their court hearings. The most prominent case is that of Christopher Warrior, a Proud Boys member who has been accused of using pepper spray to assault federal officers during the insurrection. U.S. District Judge Royce Lamberth last month ordered the director of the D.C. Department of Corrections and the warden of the D.C. jail to be held in contempt, saying it is clear that Warrell's civil rights were violated, referencing a delay in an operation Warrell needed on his hand. Now, to give you a little backstory on this guy Warrell has been causing all kind of problems since he's been in there. 1 minute something's wrong with him, next minute nothing's wrong with him. So he's been trying to play the system because he's been trying to be released. So they're bringing up the conditions of the jail and everything like this. But my question is, why is it so convenient for these Republican legislators to visit the DC jail when insurrectionists are being held there, when I guarantee they've never visited that jail before now because they didn't care about who was being held there? The conditions that jail is in today are the same conditions they've been in probably for the last 5-6 years, when people that look like you and me have been in and out of that jail and nobody gave a damn. But because these Trump insurrectionists are being held there, it's an issue. Jail is not a hotel. You're being held in confinement because of a crime you committed until you go to trial. So my question is, when we talk about the conditions of jail, when we talk about the conditions of what happens in the prisons and then different things like that, and what we know is what's going on, why is it so important when these insurrectionists are being held in a prison or a jail and the conditions of the jail when nobody gave a damn before? See, these are the things that you really got to focus in on. And I'm going to say it this way, and people make it, this is not a black and white issue. This is confinement of personnel, people, human beings who have been held in these jail cells for years and years and years, and nobody had a problem. But when they feel that people are being held there, they have the complexion for the protection, is a whole different conversation. Case in point, when they went down to the border, because they were talking about the kids are being held in cages and all this type stuff. Photo ops, that's all it is. They don't care. Let's just be honest with ourselves. They don't care about who's being held in those cages. They don't care the conditions that they're being held in. They want a photo op to make it seem like they care, because when it comes time for elections to come around, they want you to have embedded in your mind that they made a trip to the border to make it seem like they were concerned about our immigration problem. If they were that concerned about our immigration problem, immigration would not be a problem. Let's start there. Because immigration is not a problem when they fly into New York. Immigration is not a problem when they fly into California. Immigration is not a problem when they come in from Canada. It's only a problem at the southern border. I'll let you do the math. But you don't hear any immigration problems coming into airports in New York, California. Because that's where they come from. And let's be real, they flying in. They flying in. These people walking into the border, they go, oh, wait a minute. I've gone through customs many times. Many of y'all gone through customs many times. They ask you, are you here for business? You here for pleasure? What are you here for? How long is your stay? All that comes into play. And they put it in the database. But how many people are coming through New York and through Canada and through California that they're monitoring and tracking to make sure that they're only staying for their amount of time they're supposed to be here compared to the people at the southern border? Y'all help me out. So when I see these articles about, people being concerned about the jail conditions and things like that, shut up. You don't care. And then you have to ask the question, if the people that are in those jail cells are that concerned about the conditions that they're being held under, then they should have thought about that before they chose to insurrect the Capitol. Because then they wouldn't be in a jail cell. They'd be at home watching Netflix or something. But that's a choice you made. Now you got to face the consequences. But you got allies in the Senate and the Congress coming down there to make sure you're all right. Because they're not viewed as criminals. They're viewed as being, political prisoners or something to that extent. Who knows? I know. I hope ain't nobody try to call in. If I sure forgot to do the phone lines today, but that's all right. We're going to continue going. Anybody that want to call in, put your comment on. I got so caught up in seeing y'all again, I forgot to turn the phone lines on, but we all right. We're going to be all right. Let's continue. Not victims. And this right here, not victims. Edward Allen, let's see what my brother got. Good morning, little brother from Louisiana. You on fire. Good research today. Appreciate you, bro. Be careful out there on them campgrounds. I know that's where you're at chilling. Not victims. So let me give you the definition of a victim first before we get into this. Victim, one that is acted on and usually adversely affected by a force or agent. The schools are victims of the social system, such as one that is injured, destroyed, or sacrificed under any of various conditions. A victim of cancer, a victim of auto crash, a murder victim. That's the definition of victim. Now, I'm pretty sure everybody's seen the trial in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Kyle Rittenhouse is on trial for shooting those three protesters during the George Floyd protests. I can't remember the year. Everybody remembers, I think. The young man that came across the border with a gun and talking about he was there to protect businesses and found out that the businesses weren't even asking him to protect them and all that. This came out in court documents and everything. Everything now cooking breakfast, my granddaughter at my feet. Oh, okay. Enjoy yourself, bro. So Kyle Rittenhouse shot these three people, killed two. But the people that he shot during this trial, in the initial lead up to the trial, the judge said that they cannot be identified as victims. They can't be identified as victims. But they cannot be identified as rioters and looters. But prosecutors still may not call them victims. The judge, Judge Schroeder, said the word victim is a loaded word. Let's back up for a minute. The word victim is a loaded word in this trial. Now, we've all seen different trials. We know people that have been on trial. Don't act like I'm the only one that's had somebody go on trial for something. Okay. But we've all known somebody that's either been on trial we've watched the trial, and we've heard the people who were a victim being called a victim, but not in this trial. I'm trying to figure out when these judges in our system, when we call the justice system, started picking and choosing the words we use to identify someone that something was done wrong to. I've to this day not understood how a judge who is supposed to uphold the law, not by situation, but the law as it's written, can come to a jury and in front of prosecutors and say, you can't use the word victims. You have to identify them as rioters and looters. Now, mind you, from what I've seen, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I'm seeing, none of the three victims were black. From what I've seen. But you can't call them victims. They're rioters and looters. But does that mean we can't call Kyle Rittenhouse a killer? Because he killed 2 of 3. So how are we identifying him? Is he the victim? Because they said he feared for his life and all this different stuff. I'm not going to get into this because this trial, as many others we've seen, goes a certain way. Now, this week also, there was a juror that had to be let go from this trial because he was going to his car being escorted by a security guard. And as he was walking to the guard, he decided to tell a joke. And the joke consisted of, he asked the guy, he said, hey, you know why the cops stopped shooting Jacob Blake as many times as they did? Because they ran out of bullets. That was the joke. The escort judge, the police officer reported it. They put him off the trial because he was showing a bias by making that comment. But something, a comment like that has nothing to do with the trial, you remove him for. But you can't call the people victims that were shot and killed or shot and injured. Either way. Jury duty. You know, I pause when I talk about these things because I read a lot, as I've mentioned, and then I come on and I pass this information. But the more I read it and the more I speak about it, the more ignorance I see in the way our systems are set up. Because to not be able to identify these people as victims. So my biggest question would be, in the Harvey Weinstein situation or the Jeffrey Epstein situation or the R. Kelly situation or any of those situations that deal with sexual abuse or any of that type of thing or human trafficking, whatever you want to call it, are they victims? Because the definition, as I read before, one that is injured, destroyed, or sacrificed under any of various conditions, a victim of cancer, a victim of auto crash, a victim of murder. Can you be a victim of rape? See, this is where I think, we get into this where certain people want to change the narrative to fit what they want it to fit in all and most of these cases. And that's the problem where we come into with this, because now they're trying to make Kyle Rittenhouse seem that he is the victim and he was the one, he shouldn't be on trial. The people that were chasing him or the people that he shot were chasing him and they should be on trial. But still, nobody's talking about the fact that he came across the border. He was too young to have a gun and somebody gave him a gun. And nobody's talking about that. All they're talking about is the fact that you can't call the people that he killed victims. So then I transition to the next point. 1 of 12. 1 of 12. The 3 men who killed Ahmaud Arbery are on trial right now. You're supposed to be tried amongst a jury of your peers. Peers meaning people like you. Doesn't care about color or anything like that. Not supposed to. Color's not supposed to be a factor in this. But we have a jury of 12 people in Brunswick, Georgia, for a trial where they shot and killed this young man in the street supposedly trying to make a citizen's arrest, and they swept it under the rug for the longest, but until the video came out, nobody knew about it except for the people that were there. Now they've had jury selection and 12 jurors for this trial. And of those 12 jurors, only one is black. Thank you, Edward Allen. 11 whites, 1 black juror. For a case of 3 white men killing a young black man. Was he a victim? I don't know if they're going to identify him that as not or not. They're trying to identify him as being a crook. They're trying to identify him as being everything other than who he is, which is Ahmaud Arbery, a victim of white folks thinking that he shouldn't be where he was at because that's their neighborhood. They tried to call him a criminal, never stole anything, did what all of us have done in the past, go into a house that's being built that's not finished yet, look around, be nosy, try to see what kind of house built, and all that kind of stuff. Didn't take anything. But they chose to hunt him down, block him in, run up on him with a gun and think he wasn't going to react. Because the defense is the fact that he grabbed the gun from Mr. McMichaels. And that's how he got shot. But we have 12 jurors, only 1 black. Now, this took 2 weeks to get this jury selection done. They went back and forth about how these people were, the jurors were picked, chosen. I'm not going to read all this. All I'm going to tell you is the population. Glenn County is where Ahmaud Arbery lived. Black people account for nearly 27% of the population of 85,000. So out of 85,000, you got 27% that are black, according to the Census Bureau. The judge said 25% of the pool from which the final jury was chosen was black. So he's saying 1 out of 12 is 25%, according to what the census says that the population is there. Now, mind you, they mailed out 1,000 jury notices. Jury duty, 1,000 jury duty notices. Nearly 200 people were questioned by the judge and attorneys at the courthouse during selection. Some people just didn't show up. 1,000 people were sent out jury notices. Many didn't show up because they said they didn't want to be a part of this. What does that say? I'm not the brightest light bulb in the socket, but I thought that if you got jury duty, you had to show up. I thought that was something that was mandatory that you do. But out of 1,000 people that they sent notices to, they only questioned up to 200. But what happened to the other 800? I know you're not going to question all 1,000 people. Don't get me wrong. But I like to hear the excuses on why certain people didn't make it, to be questioned. I'd also like to know, what were the grounds of striking the majority of black folks from this being on this jury? Because you can't tell me when you got 12 jurors, you can only find one that you felt, that you questioned, there was an upstanding citizen that was going to be able to look at this trial and look at it in the eyes of what it was rather than what you think he was going to assume or she was going to assume. Because anytime you have a trial, people can tell you what they want when you interview them until it comes time for them to get up there and put a vote in of whether you're guilty or not. But these are the things that we talk about when we talk about the justice system needs to be reformed and things like this. And I always tell people, I said, if you get picked for jury duty, go do your duty. Because looking at this, these guys that killed Ahmaud Arbery are going to get a trial, not of people of their peers, not of the jury of their peers, but a jury of their complexion. And a lot of people will say, well, we don't pay attention to how many blacks are on a jury and other trials and everything. They always talk about that. Shut it up. High profile cases, they always talk about how many people on the jury are black and white. They break it down that way all the time. Don't act like I'm the only one, and don't act like this is the only time you heard it. What you should be more concerned about is how these district attorneys, the defense attorneys, can pick and choose who they want on there because it's the benefit of who they're defending. Now, for me, my problem comes in with the fact that the judge allowed them to eliminate eight African Americans from this jury, that none of them had issues as far as how they responded to the questions or anything like that, but the defense was adamant that they didn't want any of those 8. They only got 1. But the prosecution, I blame them because they didn't stand on their grounds to say, nah, we're not letting these people go. We need to have a multitude of people on this jury to get a fair trial. So either one or two things is going to happen, and this happens with every trial. Either they're going to be found not guilty or it's going to be a retrial. Either going to be found not guilty or it's going to be a retrial. Because, and I want people to remember this, Ahmaud Arbery is not on trial. Ahmaud Arbery is not on trial. The 3 white men that killed Ahmaud Arbery are on trial. So stop calling it the Ahmaud Arbery trial. Stop. I don't care if you call it the Brunswick, Georgia trial. I don't care if you call it, 3 white men in the gun trial. I don't care what you come up with. But leave Ahmaud Arbery's name out of the word when you say trial, because he is not on trial. The people that killed him are on trial. But people want to change the narrative like he is on trial, but he's not even there to defend himself. It's that changing of the narrative again, changing the narrative to fit the complexion of what they wanted to be rather than what it truly was. He was out jogging. Then they wanted to bring up all the things in his past that he did and all this kind of stuff. We've seen the playbook on how this works. We've seen the playbook on how this works. And we need to pay more attention and be more involved in these things that are going on, not all the way in Brunswick, Georgia, if you don't live there, but in your own community. Because this trial is high profile, so we know about it. What about the trials that are happening in your backyard every day that you don't want to do jury duty for? You don't want to stand up and find out what's really going on rather than what they're saying went on. Russell Jenkins, good morning. Appreciate you, bro. That's where we're at with that. Now I got something I want to talk about it's very sad. Very sad. Reasonable doubt. Henry Ruggs III, former player for the Las Vegas Raiders, doing 156 miles per hour in a Corvette, ran into the back of a Toyota RAV4 carrying, I think her name is Miss Trainer. 156 miles an hour in a Corvette, ran into the back of another car. Car caught on fire. The woman did not die from the accident. I don't want to get too visual on this, but I think it needs to be said if people that don't know. She didn't die from the car accident. She died because they couldn't get her out of the car and the car caught on fire, killing her and her dog that were in the car. We look at these athletes because of how they can perform on the field. But we don't look at them as human beings at times and the mistakes they will make. And now the first thing I'm going to start off with is the fact of, for all the people out here judging Henry Ruggs III for having a DUI or driving under the influence or how many shots he took at the Top Golf, where he's at, because it's alleged that he had up to 18 shots while he was at Top Golf, as well as drinks and beers. And then they said he may have left there and gone to a friend's house and had more drinks. They're not sure. But on his way home is when he had this accident. But I will tell everybody to pause with your judgment as far as him going out here drinking and driving. Because I myself, as well as some of you other ones listening and some people have driven under the influence many, many times. The only reason that it hasn't impacted you is because there was no consequences to your actions at the time. You look back on it now, you say, well, I was stupid. I was dumb. Because when I seen this, I had to reflect on things I've done in the past when going out, having some drinks and getting in the car and driving and wondering how I made it home and things like that. We have all been there at some time. But to judge this young man off of this incident, when you were praising him last week for catching the touchdown or praising him last week for catching the pass that put you in field goal position and so on and so forth and being a high draft pick and what he's done on the field, and then tearing him down as a human being because of a decision that he made that day that caused the life of someone else, you're being hypocritical. You're being very hypocritical because this could be any of us if we decide to do any of those actions. My biggest problem with this is not the fact that Henry Ruggs III did what he did. We all make life choices that can change our dichotomy and the direction and where we're trying to get to. Because you hear everybody talking about the promise of what he was as an athlete. But what about the promise of who he was as a human being? Because now this young man is facing 46 years in prison. 46 years in prison. And I think he's what, 22, 23 years old? He won't get out until he's 60 something years old if he's prosecuted to the full extent. But rather than just focusing on him as a human being and him making a mistake, a large mistake that caused death to someone else and is going to cause consequences to him for the rest of his life. My question and the reason I called it reasonable doubt is I'm going to give him the reasonable doubt because what he was doing was probably not out of the ordinary. But the reasonable doubt I put in this is, where were the people who he calls friends? Where are the people that they call his brother, my brother's keeper? Where are the people that surround these athletes in times of joy, in times of accomplishment? You know, we see them all win Super Bowl championships, all these things going, but where were these people to have his best interest in hand to say, you don't need to drive? The other part is his girlfriend was in the car with him. She videoed him playing golf at the time they were there and posted it on social media. Where was her mentality? See, we hold Henry Ruggs III accountable for his actions of what he did, and I'm not taking away from that. But my question is, where are the people to take the keys from him and stop him from doing something they know he shouldn't be doing? Where are the people to say, man, you're going to throw your career away, give me the keys? Where were the people at Top Golf? Because if allegedly he drank 18 shots of alcohol on their premises, where were they? Where were the people that kept serving him those drinks to finally get to the point to cut him off and say, you don't need no more? Whether it's Henry Ruggs III or Rodney W. Collins or you. Where were the people that say, you don't need any more, you don't need to be driving, but someone got in the car with him if he was under that condition? Where was somebody to say no? Now, I'm not taking any of the blame away from Henry Ruggs III. Don't get me wrong. But I also have to place the blame on the circle that he may travel with or the circle he may be with. And he said Derek Carr received a text from him early in the evening asking about how he can work on his golf swing because, you know, that's a receiver and a quarterback, you know, the relationship. So he reached out to him. This came out later on. But my question is, did Derek Carr, you know, he's out there having a good time, he's at Top Golf. Did he say anything about, hey, man, be careful out there? You know, if you're drinking, don't drive. See, these are relationships that build over time. Over time, where somebody jumps in and says, hey, what you doing? See, I can speak for myself when I say I have friends in my life that would stop me from getting in that car. Because the friendships, the loyalty, the love we have for each other won't allow us to get to the point that we make a decision, not that only is going to affect us, but it's going to affect anybody that's in our way when we decide to go do what we're going to do. Now, do we listen all the time? No, but they're going to say something. So I say all this to say, and let me just clear this up. They said Henry Ruggs III had a blood alcohol level of 0.161. That's double the legal limit. 0.8 is the legal limit. He was 0.161. So now you have to go into the account of the alleged 18 shots. So now I was talking yesterday and I said, with something like this happening, everybody's concentrating on Henry Ruggs III and what happened and him being the driver of the vehicle and everything. But is anybody going to go back and look at everything that led up to the fact of him getting in the car and leaving? Because if my family member was one of those people, was the one who got killed in that auto accident by Henry Ruggs III, and I know that he was at Top Golf and allegedly they served him 18 shots of alcohol, I'm not only going and concentrating on Henry Ruggs III, I'm going to talk to Top Golf. They say they have surveillance video in Top Golf that shows that he had multiple amounts of drinks. We all know that bars, establishments can be held accountable for the actions that happen after you leave their establishment if you didn't do your due diligence and cut somebody off. Let's see where this goes. Do we just go after the athlete who had the money, or do we go after who the contributor to the factor was? Now, they didn't put the drinks down his throat, but they supplied them. I'm just looking at it from a different perspective. You agree, you disagree, either way. But Henry Ruggs III could have been any of us back in our younger days. When I seen this, it hit home for me. It may not hit home for you, but it hit home for me. Because I was Henry Ruggs III at one time, getting behind the wheel and driving and things like that. Luckily, being the blessed individual I am, God didn't allow for me to be in an incident that caused harm to someone else in that way. My biggest thing is keep Henry Ruggs III in your prayers. Keep the family that was affected, whose daughter died, in your prayers, and the dog lovers in your prayers. There's not only one victim, there's three. And more and more and more, when you start talking about the family, the girlfriend that was injured, all those people that were involved are all victims. Compassion, people. It's called compassion and understanding. And taking your life experiences and putting them in the mindset of what you've done in your past compared to what someone may have done now. And rather than judge, look at how you've been blessed to not have to be in that situation, although you may have made the same decision. That's all I'm saying. I don't condone what he did. I don't approve of what he did, but I understand what he did. Not the point of having the accident, but the point of being out and drinking and driving and think you can make it home. Take that into account of a 22, 23-year-old young man who's at the pinnacle of being an NFL player, who thinks he's invincible because that's what we lead him to believe because of what he does every Sunday afternoon on a football field. But Monday through Saturday, he's got to deal with real life. And after this, life looks a whole lot different than it did last Sunday. Take that in perspective. Mind, body, and soul, year 2021, taking it one day at a time, self-care, self-help, help somebody. And today's mind, body, and soul is very simple. Most of them are. And I really don't have a quote. It's just a statement. Most of us, let's say all of us really, because we're in a different time. All of us have a plan with unlimited minutes. And that plan of unlimited minutes on your phone gives you unlimited reach. And with that unlimited reach gives you unlimited potential of who you can call at any time, no matter where they're at. The mind, body, and soul today deals with the fact of with that unlimited reach and the unlimited minutes you have and the unlimited time that we fit into our daily schedules. How come our reach out to others is not unlimited? You know, we find time to do all kinds of different things in our lives, but sometimes we don't find the time to reach out to that one person who may need to hear from you. We don't find the time to reach out to somebody and just say, hey, man, you was on my mind. We don't find the time just to reach out to somebody and say, man, I'm doing a welfare check. We have over, I'm gonna guesstimate, most of us have about 100 people in our phones, phone numbers in our phones. On the average, you probably use 4 outgoing calls. We have unlimited reach with our social media, with Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all this stuff we have. And we talk about all the friends we have on Facebook and how many people you actually communicate with and everything, but you have unlimited reach and unlimited time and unlimited potential to reach out to anyone you want to at any time you want when they cross your mind. But how often do we do that? See, we become a society where we're so focused on us that we don't take the time to focus on those. And when I say those, I'm talking about those who have been in our lives for a reason, those who have helped us along the way, those who may need to hear your voice just to say, everything's going to be all right. But rather than reach out to somebody just to say, hey, reach out to somebody through a Facebook message or DM or anything like that, just to check on somebody, we would rather scroll through Facebook and find everything wrong with the post that someone put up, rather than find the message behind why the post was put up. See, we don't do welfare checks no more. We don't just call somebody just to say, hey. And it's not just friends, it's family as well. We don't pick up the phone to call our family and check on their welfare until something's wrong. Well, something may have been wrong, but you chose not to call. Now it's not just wrong, it's an issue. It's bigger than just the phone call now. It's gotten so big that when you call, they don't even want to deal with you because they're in that situation so deep that they can't see a way out. But if you would have taken the time with that unlimited reach and those unlimited minutes that you have and that unlimited potential you have to reach out to that person, and just taking that 1 minute, you'd be surprised how much the dichotomy could have changed just from that small amount of time that you could have taken to reach out. I say all that to say this. We don't know the day, the time, or the hour. Father Time is undefeated. But we do have a choice of when we decide, what we decide, and who we decide to reach out to. My charge to all of you today is to reach out to somebody that you haven't talked to. Reach out to somebody that you truly care about that you haven't talked to. Reach out to somebody that you haven't heard from in a long period of time and just say, how you doing? And after they answer the question about how you doing, then you say the second time around, nah, bro, nah, sis, how you really doing? Because most of the time we're going to get that standard answer, I'm good. When you ask that second time around, how you really doing? Folks tend to open up. Folks tend to tell you what they're dealing with. Folks tend to tell you how they're fighting something, and they just need to hear some words of encouragement. Find it in your heart over this weekend, next couple of days, whatever you need to do. Reach out. It don't take nothing. Don't cost you nothing. You're unlimited. Back when we had minutes allowed and all that kind of stuff, we had to pay by the minute. Everybody understood when you didn't call. There ain't no excuses no more. And if you're using excuses, you're just using excuses. We got to get better. We got to do better, as I mentioned in the last Mind, Body, and Soul. Reach out. And don't hesitate to tell people how you truly feel about them. Tell them that you love them. Tell them what they've done for you. Tell them how they impact you. Give them the flowers while they're here. We get this ride one time. We get this ride one time. Make it worthwhile. Stop being hesitant to say how you feel about somebody. Stop being hesitant to let somebody know how much they impact you. Stop being hesitant to just reach out. Don't cost you nothing but a little bit of time. And I guarantee you, once you reach out that first time, it becomes easy to reach out all the time. It's that simple. Let's go ahead and wrap this up for today. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I'm glad to be back. 3 weeks is a long time, man. I appreciate everybody. You know, we're still in the middle of this pandemic. We still got a lot of things going on. We still got people fighting to get the vaccine, whether they want to get the vaccine and everything like that. Now kids can get the vaccine and everything like that. We've been dealing with this for almost 2 years now. Almost 2 years. And in these 2 years, we've had a lot of time to reflect on a lot of things. And if you come out of this pandemic now, not better than you were when you went in, the question you need to ask yourself is what you've been doing. How much time have you lost during this time where the world kind of slowed down a little bit to not reevaluate where you are, look at where you are, look at what you want, and focus on where you're trying to get to? We're not totally out yet. We got a little ways to go, but the light's in the end of the tunnel. We lost a lot of people during this time. We're still losing people. Be thankful that you wake up every morning, and be thankful that you have an opportunity to reach out to somebody, anybody, just to say, hey, because there's somebody today, I hate to put it this way, but there's somebody today that wants to reach out to somebody that's no longer here. And that's where it stopped at that point, because they don't know who else to reach out to. I appreciate y'all. I'll be back again next week. As I always say, love yourself, love one another, keep your head up, and most definitely keep your faith in God. I'll see y'all again next week. I appreciate y'all. Thanks for hanging in there with me. And I'm out. Holla at me. Peace.